Recording with the one and only Dr. Ken Alibek on Tuesday, March 12th, 2024 at 12:09 p.m. Eastern Time. It's been a minute since Dr. Alibek's been on here before. Since he's been on here multiple times before. We've done a lot of episodes on your research into autism. We've had some of your patients or your patients' parents come on and you know join us via Zoom, and it's always been awesome that they've done it because it's very late their time, and it's but I know a lot of people have watched these episodes, and it's as you've talked about, having a daughter with autism. It's something I'm not familiar with. I obviously don't know it. I don't have kids, and but the people, the fans of the show that I have had contact me, and they talk about it. It really is. It's an entire lifestyle to work with it and to work around it, and especially when it's someone you love, like a daughter or a son, it obviously impacts every moment of your life. And I think it's fascinating because, if you go back and look at past episodes with Dr. Alibek, you've had really patient testimonies is what they are, of people coming on and talking about how within weeks they've completely changed, and it's like hitting a switch. And I think, again, as a layman, I think a lot of people look at it as it's just a one and done. You have autism and it's just what it is, and there's nothing you can do about it. But your research has shown that you really can affect you know how the individual with autism operates, and you can lessen the symptoms or make the symptoms more manageable. But everyone's watching this to listen to you talk, not me. So I'm gonna shut up and I'm gonna hand it over to you, Dr. Alibek.
Tommy, thank you very much for your time, and I would be happy to explain what I'm doing.
Yes.
But when we talk about autism, it could be a very long talk. It's not a talk, let me say, for 1 hour. It could be a talk for many hours, and especially it would be absolutely essential to have a chance to talk to some autism experts later on. Just maybe if there is a way to invite some autism expert
Sure.
and to have a chance to for interaction, it would be absolutely great.
Sure. I'll make a note of that.
Okay, thank you. Just but I need to say before we start talking. I've never gotten any funding from any fund, from any government entity, no single penny, just from anybody else. The only thing I had is some support from my company's president. He was giving me a chance, let me say, to spend some time uh, just to study autism, and he gave me permission just after the end of normal business hours to do consultations for parents having autistic children. And this is especially important because for many years since I started studying autism and then started treating kids, I didn't have, throughout this period of 15 years already, I didn't have any external funding for for this work. Even though, but even without funding, just people, especially parents, are talking to each other, and a number of kids actually who have been treated over this period of time is far more than 1,000 kids. Maybe it looks like it's coming to 1,200 or so. Some people could say, okay, why your information is not available? Just for a bigger audience. My problem is because I'm a physician and I'm licensed and having all my diplomas in the former Soviet Union, not in the United States. From this point, I cannot treat children here. Just I can. I give some suggestions to some parents who are asking for help, but as a physician, I cannot I cannot treat them as a physician here in the United States. But at the same time, I would be absolutely happy just if there are some entities like some foundations or groups or physicians or clinics interested in the way of treatment. I'd be happy to do so. It's no question. And I would be happy if I had a chance to work with some entities who would be happy to listen or would be interested in listening to me. Okay. Now, from this kind of initial disclaimer, let me tell about autism itself. Just it's not a big secret, but I started studying autism when I found out that my daughter was autistic. And I spent many years reading, trying to understand what can be done and so on and so forth. But nowadays, I can tell you the earlier we start our interventions, the best results we're going to see. It's for sure. First, we need to keep in mind, autism actually is a spectrum. And some people even just, I have a friend who is a good professor, and he's autistic, but it's a level of autism in which he has some things related to his emotional status, some communication things, but otherwise he's a different person. I mean, let me say this: you would never say he's autistic. You could see some differences, but they're not big. But at another extreme, we can see completely different kids, kids who are having, with no ability to speak, no ability of any form of communication, and we see that these kids, in many cases, they are kind of aggressive, hyperactive, having some severe emotional things, and it's sometimes these kids cannot be even. Parents usually don't let these kids even studying something because they are absolutely kind of they have no resistance to the outside world. I mean, because of this type of behavior. That's why when we talk about autism, of course, it's a big spectrum, but currently we know that autism is a neuropsychiatric disorder, and when we deal with autism, we try to treat some neurological problems or psychiatric problems, and from this point, it's since early 40s when autism was already established as a disease, neurological disorder. Everything was focused on these neurological psychiatric problems. But at the same time, I'd like to say that if somebody is reading research publications from all over the world, we can see that a huge number of publications, they say about some other things related to autism. But currently, people don't pay much attention to these problems because kind of neurological and psychiatric symptoms or syndromes, they are more visible. People see these things first, and other things are being considered kind of comorbidities or not a big deal. And all attempts today are focused on something related to the brain or central or peripheral nervous system. When I started studying this, you can imagine no much information at that time. I mean, just at the beginning, it was about 17 or even 18 years ago when I first found out that my daughter was autistic. I spent years trying to understand what it was. I saw so many things related to some vitamins, some antipsychotics, many things, and of course, taking our daughter to different clinics, including university clinics. We saw, my wife and myself, we saw that after each intervention, we saw that our daughter was getting worse and worse. Just after applying one antipsychotic, some short-time improvement, then she would start getting even worse. That's why I understood that there was no treatment at all in any form, not just for curing autism, of course, it was obvious that there is no even any more, let's say, reliable treatment approaches. And actually, it's, physicians understand this. Even just today, we can say that all things they can have either a positive effect or a negative effect. Everything is clearly described in scientific literature and in the instructions for using one or another medication. And everybody knows there is no single group of medications which can be good for everybody to help treating autism. That's why I decided just to go myself, starting with my daughter, trying to understand what's going on. And because I'm an expert in infectious diseases, and I started from my sides, saying, okay, if there is no explanation, if people can understand what's happening, in this case, maybe we need to take a look at something else. And I started going forward. At that time, not much information at all. But 15 years ago, 16 years ago, there was just impossible to say whether there is an infection root of autism. Some slight publications, I mean, just small publications with no good statistics, this type of things, you would see in some literature. But going forward, I was noticing that a number of things related to some infectious roots were coming along. And it's interesting, at some point, when I collected some information, I decided to talk to some clinicians, and I talked to, it was not a talk, it's email exchange between a chief of pediatrics of a very big, reputable hospital system here in the States, explaining that what I found in scientific literature, what I found, let me say, in the blood tests of these kids, I was happy to say, okay, looks like I know how it begins. The only thing I got as a response saying, Ken, it's interesting, but but you need to remember that in the 19th century, Dr. Koch in Germany said it should be specific infection, just in order to say that it has a kind of infectious root. It's a long theory. We call it Koch principle. It could mean, okay, if you infect an animal or a human is infected, and when you take samples, you can isolate this the same infectious agent. It could mean this it's an infection disease. But she said if you have a number of viruses and bacteria which can cause autism, as you state, it means you're wrong. Okay. And it's interesting from this point. Just I can explain this a little bit more, but what I'm finding now, I mean, just a number of publications stating that there is connection between chronic, not acute infections, not like plague or anthrax, nothing like this. Just we don't pay attention nowadays. There are so many chronic infections, and the mechanisms of chronic infections are completely different. They are chronic infections that they include a big number of viruses from a herpes group, some other viruses, some intracellular bacteria like mycoplasma, like chlamydia, this type of things. They are a good player in terms of creating some chronic conditions. And then, I cannot say, as I said before, I saw so many publications at that time. Nowadays, you can, if you spend much time, you can find a lot of publications related to this. But it's it's a kind of strange situation when we see a huge, let me call it industry. It's which includes, let me say, kind of behavioral therapies, some language. I mean, people who are trying just to help kids to start speaking, this type of things. It's a kind of world, for example, which is actually is essential, it's important, it should be continued. But at the same time, even a huge amount of information about possible causes, which include infectious agents, chronic infections, which include chronic inflammation. This type, let me say, is well published, well accepted nowadays by a scientific community, but but it hasn't come. The studies haven't come, let me say, to the field of practical, usage in the field of autism. It's proceeding from this to make this explanation more clear. I can say this: when parents come to me asking for help, I'm asking just to have some blood tests, some urine tests, but because they're located everywhere in the world, I suggest to go to local diagnostic centers and have some lab tests available when they come to me. It's interesting, but it's much easier to do this type of work, let me say, in many countries, like in the former Soviet Union, in Ukraine, in Kazakhstan, in Kyrgyzstan, in Russia, many countries of that in that area. And when they come to me, they send screens, let me say, of lab test results, and I see what and I explain to parents what I see, let me say, in the information they send to me. And what I can say in this case is just what we see for sure. In 99% cases, we see chronic infections. We see chronic infection in the form of antibodies. Just kind of reactions to the immune system to these infections. I already published a couple of articles quite a while ago showing what kind of infections we can see in autistic children. Recently, I finished another study. Again, it's my study from the point of collecting this information from the parents, because it's not a scientific research per se; it's a kind of observational study, because this work has been done. When parents do this, some people live, let me say, people live in different countries. They go to different diagnostic centers. And they bring, let me say, the results from different centers. Of course, we can just, what I can do, I can say, I can put together the results and say, okay, what I see in these children. And, just a recent study, observational study, it was about 144 or 142 kids. And as I said before, I have no funding, I have no assistance. Just, of course, keeping in mind I need to do some other work, let me say, for support myself, unrelated to autism. It usually takes time. And what I see at this point, first, when there is a way to collect good information from the kids, from the parents of these kids. I can see that many of these kids, they have a big number of pathologies unrelated, or let me say, being or considered by some physicians as comorbidities of these kids. Let me name some of them. First, what I see, otitis media. I mean, it's kids, they have infections, ear infections. Many of them, they have chronic tonsillitis, or many of these kids, they have gastrointestinal kind of infections, or something, I would say, I would call it ulcerative colitis, or this type of, something of this type, because they have some severe problems with gastrointestinal tract. Many kids have genital tract infections. And just when I start assembling, I see that they have infections. And based on this, I started asking some parents, saying, okay, can you do some tests related to immune system normal function or dysfunction? And what I can say, in 100% cases, I see some severe immune dysfunction in these kids. And just what, that's why, with all my knowledge of what's happening in the brain, I can say we have so many pathologic conditions, and many of them either of infectious origin or autoimmune. And there are some tests just to test whether they have some autoimmune problems. Then it's getting more now severe allergic conditions, the severe allergies of different type. And in some cases, people's parents say, okay, we don't have allergy per se, and just time to time something coming and going. But what's important is we see in the blood tests, there are some tests which can say, okay, this child has some problems with the immune system. I mean, into as a kind of a certain type of allergy. I don't want to go deep into explanation because any time when I say something specific, of course, it could be kind of I would say puzzling to regular people. But I would be happy, that's what I said before, I would be happy to talk to professionals, explaining what we see and what can be done. And of course, the question is, because when why people think that it's incurable? Because what we do, we usually use CDC information, some information from the National Institutes of Health, which they state that it's currently incurable and the causes are unknown. And they state we have, they say it's a genetic condition. This is a genetic condition with some involvement of environmental factors. Okay, so what, of course, it's kind of vague explanation because it seems to me there is nothing to say yet. But when you start analyzing, and especially just kind of for the last maybe 30 years, there is a huge kind of influx of publications related to genetic problems in autistic children. And just for many years, many scientists have been trying just to find a gene of autism or the genes of autism, but there is nothing like this. They don't exist. That's what we can say at this point. There is no a particular gene, and there are no particular genes saying, okay, these are autistic genes. And again, sometimes I thought, okay, why we pay so much attention to the genetic origin of autism? It's interesting to say from this point, because any disease, any disease is having a genetic origin. Any. But the question is always this. Just sometimes we say, okay, some gene mutations, different type of mutations, kind of, some more sophisticated genetic mutations or genetic, dysregulations, something kind of, I would call them kind of single nucleotide variations. Just we can see in any person, and this information is collected already. And what's clear at this point of time, there is no zero a gene found to be responsible for autism. And the question is why, for example, whether this genetic study is essential to understand autism. Yes, they are. But at the same time, because these studies have given us the information that there is kind of, interplay between genes or gene clusters, let me say, and some other factors playing a role. Yes, that's why people say about environmental factors. But what's absolutely essential, because it seems to me it's nowadays it's easier to focus because we have great machineries now just for testing human genome, to do human genome study. Just we have some good studies for transcriptome analysis, and we can say, okay, we see this. Let me say the genes responsible for autism development. But as soon as you start collecting all this information, it's getting so impossible to understand. Up to 12,000 genes are shown to be dysregulated in the case of autism. Of course, not in a single child, let me say, just when people collect all this information. They say, okay, we see some genes related to the immune system function, usually some samples taken from immune cells, and then some samples taken from autopsy from the brains of children who died, and just everything is getting so unclear what's going on, because just having 12,000 genes dysregulated, let me say it's not the case. It means that there is no a certain group of genes which can say, okay, this child's having autism. Okay, and when we proceed from this, if we proceed from this point, okay, we need to understand. You remember what I said, because any disease, any pathology can be considered genetic. Genetic from this point. Just when we have some, for example, let me go to a different field, for cancer, and just it could be clearer to understand. Just we know that just 5, maybe 10% of cancer they have, they're considered having been inherited, just no more. There are some familiar cancers, for example, just if somebody was having some cancer in the family, let me say, probability of having same different type of cancer in ancestors. In the kids or grandkids is higher, but up to 80% of cancers, they have nothing to do, let me say, with inheritance. In this case, they are so-called sporadic cancers. Sporadic cancers, it means, for example, we accumulate our changes throughout our lives, and finally, there's a kind of certain genes when some oncogenic genes, let me say, getting activated, and so-called tumor suppressor genes are getting, suppressed for example, people start getting cancers. It means, for example, we have no, let me say, cancer, we would have from the beginning, just it's not inherited. We acquire all these changes throughout our lives, and finally, which results in cancer. And from this point, it's same situation with autism, but one more thing to add. When we talk about what kind of changes, we say environmental factors. And what kind of environmental factors in case? Because nowadays we see more and more information coming, let me say, from different publications, from different countries, that so many infectious agents, not traditional infectious agents, just some bacteria, some viruses, some fungi, they are able, let me say, to establish a condition which could finally lead to cancer development. And this study, many studies are underway, but there is no well-established science, so-called viral carcinogenesis or bacterial carcinogenesis. They have not well established yet. Same situation, but at the same time, the question is what mechanisms can be involved in causing cancers, and I'll come to autism later on. And when we analyze what kind of mechanisms, there are several mechanisms. Some virus or bacteria can cause some mutations. But what is absolutely essential, they can establish strong pro-inflammatory conditions. Pro-inflammatory. It means, for example, just a long-term inflammation in certain area, in certain organ, would finally result in cancer development in this particular organ. Okay, this is actually science which is already available. It means a kind of interplay between environmental factors in terms of capable of causing chronic inflammation, capable of causing some genetic changing, or most likely epigenetic or purely genetic. And in addition to this, these genetic changes, this combination actually could finally result in cancer development. The same situation with autism. But the problem with autism, because we see the situation in children. And we see that, and in this case, we usually start seeing some possible future problems in newborns already. That's what we see. It could mean, and then I started collecting some publications, and I found out that parental conditions, parental situations could play a very significant role in autism development. And in this case, first coming to our back to our discussion, many years ago, looks like in the 70s of last century, some group of viruses and bacteria have been considered congenital pathogens. They can cause infections or some pathologies in newborns, infecting fetus during perinatal period. And this type of and this science is pretty well established. It's well known, but again, it's in a different field. But we know that a simple herpes simple virus. Then we know that Epstein virus is not considered congenital, but cytomegalovirus, toxoplasma. Then some other viruses and bacteria are included in the group of so-called torch viruses, torch infectious agents. And what we see just when we have lab tests of these children, we see that they are infected either by 1 or 2 or even 5, 7 different viruses. just a kind of current science, we have some misunderstanding. When a physician says, okay, we see cytomegalovirus, because but it's already not active, and it's not a problem for a child. But it's a huge mistake, because they're so-called reactivating viruses. They are having two stages: latent stage, let me say, and reactivated stage. Time to time they get reactivated, and they come from the cells, they cause extra damage. Let me say, go back, immune system is trying to suppress. Then let me say they're going back into cells, stay dormant for a while, or we say a latent state. And then they can come out, let me say, and start, infecting again. That's what actually we see with the children having autism. And just some people could say, okay, what's the connection between the infection in the brain? But what we need to keep in mind, these viruses, many of them, they are pantropic, and they can cause damage, let me say, in many organs, including the brain. And this information is, again, well available. That's why this is a kind of a part of a problem. Just, of course, if it was just this situation, it would be very easy to say, okay, it's actually easy to convince, because and hundreds of cases I can show what kind of virus and bacteria can be found in those antibodies to the virus can be found in these children. But and as I said before, these viruses, bacteria, they can cause two things: immune system dysregulation, but a severe, different, I would say, not acute, but so-called chronic or subacute form of inflammation. That's what we can see. And in this case, and now we can imagine that when a child is being developed early, at early age, what we can see in this case, the brain of such a child is developing under pressure of inflammation all the time. And what you can expect from the brain of a child when, let me say, just all this, because what is brain? Brain is having an ability, let me say, it starts forming, let me say, early in the embryonic condition. And if we have a virus or infection, this as a teratogen, which actually is already infected the brain, this brain is developing under pressure of this infection and inflammation. And we cannot expect normal development in terms of how these neurons would be interconnected, how the brain anatomically would be formed, let me say, under this, I will call it a pressure of inflammation. That's why when we analyze the brain, just again, a big number of publications pointing out on many changes in the brain. They have different kind. Just the brain study is already, if we collect this information, we can say how many anatomical, physiological changes we can see in the brain of such a child. It's important to mention that kind of prefrontal area of such children, in many cases, it's so-called hyper connected, with a bigger number of neurons, and in some bigger number of so-called supporting cells, like astrocytes, the so-called
glial cells.
Yeah. And what, from this point, the question is why? And just I'm working on an article trying to understand, just from different publications, trying to understand what actually is happening to the brain. And for the first time, I'd like to say, based on the publications, I can say now that the brain of such a child is always inflamed. That's what should be stated, let me say, absolutely profoundly, let me say, just we should state, inflammation is a key, neuroinflammation is a key in case of autism. But I'm not talking in this case about inflammation and in some other organs, because it's definitely systemic. And when we have this, and when we talk about inflammation, of course, first we need to understand what inflammation is. Okay, inflammation. Inflammation actually is a kind of activation of some immune cells in the brain, glia cells, I mean, just astrocytes, many things. For example, they're not neurons, and they are producing a big number of mediators of inflammation. As soon as I mean, we see the mediators of inflammation, actually they're active. It could be, let me say, it's a result of immune system dysregulation. It's so-called neuroglia. We call it neuroglia activation, but neuroglia activation is inflammation. That's what we must say. And but at the same time, when we talk about inflammation, we need to keep in mind inflammation is not something which can exist separately from anything. It's a result of immune system dysregulation. That's the problem, because these are interconnections. In this case, when I started reading some articles, some publications, what I found out, initially there's several types of inflammations. One is type of serous inflammation, then so-called proliferative inflammation, then so-called hyperplastic inflammation, and and that's what this knowledge has been already well forgotten, but it existed when we studied infectious agents. And if you analyze the brain of a child, it was already noticed some publications stating there is some liquid in the brain. I mean, of newborns, many of them, about 70% or so. And and it was noticed that the amount of so-called cerebral spinal fluid is kind of in existence. I mean, just a bigger amounts of this fluid. But but it's not fluid per se. That's what I think. It's so-called. It's a serous inflammation. This is actually the case because some mediators of inflammation can be found, let me say, in this liquid. It's a first stage of inflammation, if people remember this. And then, let me say, over time, this inflammation is converting itself into proliferative inflammation. In this case, we see some reduction of liquid in the brain, but we start seeing bigger number of inflammatory cells in the brain. It has been noticed already, a bigger number of neuroglia cells, astrocytes, and it's seen again. Okay, and but nobody says it's inflammation, because people talk about proliferation, people talk about something else, but it's inflammation. It's a type of inflammation. But over time, let me say, it's getting converted into so-called hyperplastic inflammation, in which we see already a bigger number of own tissues. In case of, because we see this type of inflammation in many other organs. But in this particular case, we're talking about inflammation in the brain, and we see a bigger number of neurons in the brain. And the great majority of these neurons in the so-called prefrontal area. But just why? Of course, nobody has answered this question yet. And the only thing, in my opinion, the explanation, because this part of the brain is developing with very high, unbelievably high speed. The faster speed, the higher probability of having, inflammation more active in the brain. Of course, it should be studied by some neuroscientists, neuroinfection scientists, but that's why we see over connection. Just bigger number of neurons, a bigger number of interconnections, and because of inflammation, we see these interconnections are more chaotic. And based on the severity of the situation, we can see that's why we see children with different symptoms, severe symptoms, let me say, lighter symptoms, and it depends on first on this. But we shouldn't forget that, let me say, the inflammation is taking place in some other organs. I mean, some other parts, some other lobes of the brain. And from this case, we can see these kids and just people just don't pay attention. Just when I can give you an example. When we see a child who is behaving abruptly, I mean, hyperactive, aggressive, uh, in severe anxiety. I mean, yes, it's unruly child. Just some people cannot understand why. But can you imagine this? If the brain is developing under inflammation, in this case, it doesn't mean that inflammation will be staying just in the brain, because we have 12 pairs, let me say, of nerves going from the brain into different organs. I mean, just for to our optical nerves. Let me say, our nerves going to so-called trigeminal nerve, for example. We see some nerves which are responsible for I mean, detecting
Olfactory.
smells, olfactory, then for hearing, for feeling.
Talking.
Yeah,
Is it Wernicke's?
absolutely.
Or is that
And,
hearing?
yeah, and now just you imagine, because what we see usually, we see a child who is behaving, who is not behaving a normal way, correct? But the problem is, just because, for example, if a neurotypical child is developing, this child, let me say, is acquiring the knowledge how to behave, how to speak from collecting signals, let me say, from outside, correct? Look at some other people, I mean, there's parents and so on. So now you imagine a child who doesn't have these systems normally working. This child is not acquiring the knowledge. That's the case. That's why, for example, from the beginning, this child is getting different signals, let me say, this kind of signal disruption. And in this case, this child has no idea how to behave. Okay? And just depending on severity of damage, at this, we could see, let me say, different types of behavioral things. That's the thing. In this case, our sensory systems, I mean, just all these things, they're responsible for acquiring knowledge. The children cannot get this knowledge. Maybe because, let me say, severe inflammation in the brain, let me say, in these nerves, let me say, and there is no system of, I mean, getting signals, appropriate signals, processing them, let me say, in acquiring certain understanding how to behave, okay, or how to say, how to speak. They cannot do this because they don't get appropriate signals. That's the case. And this situation can be confirmed in the same of, let me say, some motor skills. Because all parents I'm talking, they say 90%, or maybe even more, they say they have some problems. Fine motor skills, let me say, and gross motor skills, they have these problems. I mean, they cannot keep pencils normally, they cannot write. I mean, just kind of, they have no just precise ability, I mean, how to write and how to draw. That's what we see in many cases. Many kids, they cannot, initially, they cannot walk normally. Just we see how, for example, they're afraid of stepping down on escalators. They're afraid of, walking long distances, let me say. They're getting tired. They cannot ride bicycles. I mean, even just we see all these things which actually in all these organs. It means, but just, and when parents are coming to doctors or to educators, they try to treat this condition separately. But if you keep in mind that it's inflammation, the inflammation which is caused by certain infectious agents, we know, for example, what we need to start first, correct? Because we need to deal with inflammation. Inflammation is the key. And just again, it's always a matter of time. I mean, availability of time. Just looks like there was a few years ago there's publication, some literature analysis made by a good group of scientists they analyzed articles, and from 460 articles, they found out in autism, they tried to find out how many of them were related to inflammation, and they found out that 95 or so percent of articles were saying about autism and inflammation. Okay, the first and foremost thing we need to say, okay, guys, if we understand that these children are not capable in many cases, or have a low capability of getting knowledge, being trained, being educated, we need to keep in mind that there is some process which is taking place in the brain, which doesn't let these children to acquire the knowledge. And this is inflammation. In this case, isn't it simple? Okay, guys, let's start taking inflammation, because that's what we don't pay attention to. Because not just a regular inflammation, not acute inflammation, not subacute inflammation, we're talking about chronic inflammation. But then just we need to understand what kind of, environmental factors are causing this type of inflammation. And it's absolutely obvious that these factors, whatever we say, whatever we try to find, yes, people were talking about heavy metals, pollutants, this type of things. Nothing has been confirmed. Absolutely zero. And the only thing which is actually coming out all the time, over and over again, infectious agents. There is nothing else. We need to find a way to admit this. And as soon as we admit this, as soon as we understand what's happening, we will be able to start regular treatments. And just some people could say, okay, some people, my cat is getting practice. Okay, and some people say, okay, how about aggression? How about depression? How about anxiety? How about other things, for example, related to autistic children? How we can treat this condition, because this is the key, correct? Because we can treat, just to start helping kids, just to start getting more understanding, and ability to get knowledge. But the problem is, if these scientists start getting deeper in all these conditions, including depression, aggression, then anxiety, even just recent studies, schizophrenia, can you imagine all these psychiatric or neuropsychiatric conditions? They all relate, they all have, let me say, inflammation. They are inflammatory conditions. Even epilepsy is an inflammatory condition. And this is just the only thing. Yes, we shouldn't, yes, we need to have, let me say, kind of a longer walk to understand, let me say, from the symptoms we see to the actual initial cause. We always need to go, let me say, from symptoms to, I would say, root causes of each condition. And the deeper you go, the more information we start acquiring, and this information is related to, information related to inflammation. Inflammation is the key. Inflammation based on infectious. As soon as we understand this, we start treating. Well, this is just the beginning of our journey, just to start, how to start. The earlier we find this, the faster we see survival. And I could say it's a long process, but a child who's 2 years old, 3 years old, it takes half a year, the child is neurotypical already. That's what I see. The children are getting older, the process of treatment is taking a longer time, but finally we can get a regular child maybe in about 2 or 3 years. It's a long process because it's not a matter of suppressing inflammation. It's a matter to restore brain functioning. It's possible as well. All this talk about intellectual disability. It's possible these children are getting intellectually capable. Because this kind of, it's not a situation in which we say just after they would still be incapable. No, they're getting better. They start getting better educated, learning abilities are improving, so on so on. But when we come to a certain point, when the brain is already kind of, loses its ability, let me say, just to be, I mean, reprogrammed, let me put this way, we see some improvement, maybe reducing some aggression, reducing some anxiety. Anxiety is the most difficult thing to just to treat. But aggression, practically in all 100% cases, it's treatable. I mean, just, but when a child is already coming to a puberty period or older, a probability of getting neurotypical child, let me say, is moving to zero. But there is still great way to improve child conditions, and make these children less aggressive, with kind of subsided anxiety. These steps are possible. But in this case, Tommy, I'm sorry, just I took an hour of your time.
No,
But yeah, I suggest, if you accept it, if people are interested, I can continue talking and answering.
absolutely.
You can ask specific questions, what they're interested in, and I'll be happy to present my view on how to treat, what kind of things are helping, what kind of wouldn't work, and moreover, I would be happy to collaborate with anybody. I mean, just kind of any entity, any university interested in these approaches. Even more, I would say, uh, definitely, when I talk to the parents of these children, they say they would be happy to address all the questions. I mean, just because whatever I say or anybody says, it's not. We can randomly select. For example, it would be a list of people who agree, and just people can ask questions about. Of course, we need to keep in mind they are not physicians, they are not scientists. We can explain how the case were changing over time. Okay,
Yes, sir.
that's what I would suggest to do.
Yeah.
And it's okay. Just I'm sorry for maybe for some mumbling.
No, you're fine. You did no, you did
Next
perfect.
time,
You
next
did
time, Tony, I'll try. It looks like my dentist finally said this Friday he would be able to replace some
take the bridge out.
a bridge, let me say, to regular implants.
No, you did fine. I don't think anyone Dr. Alibek has a bridge in. I don't think anyone
But
could tell.
I felt sometimes I needed, let me say, just to find a more appropriate word,
Mm,
which shouldn't be very long, because as soon as
yeah.
I say something longer, let me say, just my inability, let me say, to say it clearly is a little
Starts to
bit
mumble a little. Yeah.
yeah.
I get you. No, you were fine. No, you did perfect. Honestly, you did absolutely perfect.
Mm.
I probably mumbled more than you. Um, and also, no, you didn't take an hour of my time, man. I wouldn't invite you on here. I wouldn't continually have you back on if I didn't enjoy talking to you and if I didn't find you interesting. It's you didn't take an hour of time. You gave me an hour of your time, and I
Mhm.
appreciate it.
So, Tommy, it's up to you if I mean
Yeah, I made a note. I'm gonna reach out to. I mean, I can't promise anything, but I'm gonna try to reach out to experts in this field and just see if anyone would want to come on and just
mhm.
just talk or
No, it's what let me put this way, just if somebody listen to this, uh, I'm not in a position just to get kind of I would say uh, priority things, and just to me it's not a big thing, because I'm 74 this year, and in this
really.
case yeah, I'm going to be 74.
I did not know that. Thought you were in your thought you were
Yeah.
in your 60s. All right.
Okay, and from this point, it's for good or for bad, it looks like I'm the only one having uh, an experience of talking to the parents and seeing
Yeah.
hundreds and hundreds of kids every day.
Yeah.
And this is analyzing. I have, it looks like the biggest uh, uh, pack of information of all organic physical changes in these kids. And I'd be happy to change, to exchange all this information. I'd be happy to share this information.
Sure.
And if there is an entity or foundation interested in creating, because I'm alone, nobody else. And in this case, I cannot do any clinical studies by myself.
Yeah.
But if somebody is interested or some entity is interested, they have funding for this, I'd be happy to help you because after so many different types of treatments, I know how autism can be treated. And I can tell for sure there is a cure for autism. Let me state it, there is a cure for autism, but it's not in the field of genetics. It's not in the field of behavioral science. The treatment, let me say, in specific medical scientists related to the treatment of inflammation, the inflammation caused, let me say, and promoted by certain infections in this case. And the earlier we start treatment for 3-5 year children, it's a full recovery, full. For children who are older, 50-70% recovery possibility, but throughout longer time. And for children who are older, 12, 13, 15 years old, there is a significant probability of improvement. And of course, it would be great because collaboration is key, because we need to have a much bigger group of scientists. And I'm ready to share my knowledge, my expertise with the scientists and to start moving forward. There is a way, there is hope, and this hope must result, let me say, in the actual treatment, let me say, and say, okay, autism was the most severe and unknown disease, and now we found a way how to treat it.
Yeah. Let's do
Okay?
it. Yes, sir.
Mhm.
Dr.
Okay.
Alibek, let's wrap this up. I'll let you go, and I'll email you this episode, and I will try to get in touch with any and all experts, and we'll put something together.
Okay, great.
All right,
Okay,
Dr. Alibek.
Tony.
Great,
Okay, good.
great seeing you, sir. Thank you so
Nice seeing you
much.
too. Okay, bye-bye.
All right, bye
Bye.
bye, guys. Thanks for
Recording
watching.
stopped.
Much love, everybody. Peace. And what's up, guys? Real quick, I gotta go to the restroom. I got another show in 3 minutes. Again, guys, podcast sponsored by American Heart for Gold. Text Tommy to 65532. Get a chance to win $5,000 of free silver. This right here is a 100-ounce brick. It's about $2,500. I think you could almost get two of them. I mean that's a lot of silver. You could kill someone or something, maybe like a bear. But yeah, I mean, this is just a really quick, ad because I got another show in less than 2 minutes. Um, to me, it's any company that is willing to even sponsor the show and keep it going is badass. Whether they're selling pens or keyboards or, pillows or toothpaste, to me, that much doesn't even really matter. It's cool enough that a company is sponsoring the show to a significant degree, to keep it going and fund it. That I would ask you all to at least go check it out. You know, then they're also, it's just the value of investing in bullion of, inflation proof. You're not necessarily going to grow it, but you're not going to lose it. And with central bank digital currencies, with inflation, with seemingly the inevitable march towards a technocratic, tyrannical, dystopian future hellhole, um, it's one of the few things that I think can, up there with ammunition and I guess gardening. It's one of the few things that can mark your independence. But above all else, and I'm just going to be very honest, dude, support the podcast. If you like the podcast, support a company that's cool enough to support the podcast. That's that's my pitch. Obviously, it's very close to my heart. Um, but that's what I would say is go support a company that supports my podcast and allows me to do interviews with every and any guest and cover any topic and never have to back away from it because I'm not sure what is the company like or what it. No, it's a big middle finger to censorship. And everyone likes to talk about free speech. Very few people do it. Most shows tiptoe around it. Um, And I think one of the, there's not many, but there are some superlatives of this show, and one of them is I do not ever back down from a topic and staying true to myself. So if you guys like that about the show, support the podcast. Again, the link is in the description. American Hartford Gold. Text Tommy to 65532. You'll get some money off. Get a chance to win some silver. All right, guys. Love you. Peace.